Good, new. My name's Wyatt, and this is the New Hampshire Vintage Channel. Now, this is my first YouTube video, so I figured it'd be a good start to kind of give a quick tour of some of the sleds I acquired throughout the years. Now, two of these aren't mine, not gonna lie to you, and I'll get to those when we get to them. But I figured some of these actually have a pretty good story, so we'll go throughout each and every single one of these, probably start with the black one and make our way down. So let's get started. So we're going to start here with this Arctic Cat Puma. She's a 1972 race sled, allegedly. The guy that I got it from raced it for, he said around 10 years, and then the guy he got it from allegedly raced it for, I don't know how many years before that. But she has a 440 motor with a little velocity stack on the carb. And when I got it, I had to put new fuel lines, rebuild the Tillotson that's in it. He did give me a Mikuni with a pretty much an angled piece here to make the Mikuni nice and flat because they don't like to be at an angle. And I decided to try to redo the old Tillotson because I actually like Tillotsons. They're always fun to rebuild. I had the back seat upholstered. It only came with the foam, and I actually had the plywood cut out. I did that myself, probably not perfectly, but good enough. And I picked up this cheap Amazon vinyl upholstery type stuff. It's actually pretty good. It keeps water out, and it seems to be working good so far. I've only ran the sled a few times. My buddy's wife, she actually upholstered it for me, and she did a terrific job. It was her first time too, and she usually does like boat covers and that kind of thing. So this is her first kind of seat venture, and it worked out really good. She did an awesome job. So I got that bolted on, and yeah. Anyway, not much to it. This one doesn't really have a cool backstory. But like I said, it's had skis wrap from the past racing. It sounds really good. I'll get her started and have you guys hear it. This one does run and ride. Really just needs the headlight done, which I might do like an LED kind of cool aftermarket kind of setup, or I'll just leave it original. I'm not sure yet. I'll think about that. So let's get her started and yeah, go from there. We'll move on to the next one. So this one does not like to start until she's warm. Cold starting, no, not a fan. So it's going to take me a second, but let's see if we can get this thing fired up and running. She might need some spray, but we'll see. Once she's running though, and she gets warm, she's first pull. So let's see what we can do here. Grab a little bit of spray. Let her eat some of this up. Come on, sweetie. Well, as you can see by the smoke, she just fired up for a second for me, but let me try this again. She just died right after. take you around, yeah. So now that I got it all smoky in here, let's move on to the next one. This is a 1981 Ski-Doo Citation. It's a one-lunger, 250, I believe. This is the one that I think my next video I'm going to do will be a will it run, because this one has not run, and he's had it for a year now, just stored here, and he hasn't had the time to get into it, and I do. So I might get all new fuel lines, carb cleaned, check out any other odds and ends, make sure there's no mouse houses in the air box and whatnot, and we'll see if we can get this one going. I don't really have that much of a story on this one. We actually picked it up last spring, and he got a really good deal on it, so he scooped it up. He's kind of a Citation fan, and we'll see what we can do about this one. So this one here is a 1970 Johnson ski horse, wide track. This one is a pretty cool story, and I'll bring you in on the stuff that I found in it. So I picked this one up in Southwest New Hampshire. The guy that I bought it from, his uncle actually bought it brand new, and his uncle actually crashed it and ripped the right ski, and that's how it got parked. It tweaked the tie rod and all that. So he put it in the back of the barn for what the guy I got it from said was around 25 years. So he actually took it out last year, and he was going to fix it up, and he just didn't want to do it. He didn't want to spend the time. It didn't mean anything to him. And so that's where I came along and scooped it up. So this one here, I've had taken apart completely, literally from the windshield down. I actually did put on an aftermarket windshield. I do have the original one. And I had the engine taken out. The amount of mouse nests I found in this thing is incredible. I wish I documented this one earlier. I picked this thing up way before I even thought about doing a YouTube deal. Let me bring you guys closer to this one, and I'll give you a whole close-up tour on it. So here it is, 1970 Johnson. Now this is some goodies that was in a really ratty bag under the seat, but we'll get to those in a second. What you see is what condition it was when I grabbed it. I haven't done anything besides mechanical work to this, and I tried to keep it as minimal as possible. So under the seat was where all the goodies were. I have 2 brand new belts for it that I'm going to put on. A little toe strap. I got it stuck the other day. We got 1.5 feet of snow in New Hampshire last week. Unfortunately, most of it's all gone. Had a big rainstorm that just came through. But it is not a lot of rust. It is virtually rust hole free. It does have a lot of surface rust, but at least it's not eaten through, especially under the seat. All this is all original. Seat has a few rips and tears. It is very crispy, as you can see. I'm just gonna use it while I can and maybe get reupholstered eventually, but I wanted to keep this thing pretty ratty as possible. It just came out of a barn for 30 years, and I want to keep it looking that way. The gas tank. Now this, let's see. I don't know if you can see in there. It's pretty dark, but it was rusty. I put Evapo-Rust in this tank for, oh boy, 2 weeks straight, and it finally ate everything through to where it was clean enough for gas. I am going to get a new gas cap for it. I just siliconed this one, but they're expensive. $80 on Amazon for the same one. Kelco quarter turn. Anyway, it does have reverse, which is pretty cool. It does work. Compression release does not work yet. I still haven't figured that out. The neutral lockout does not work either. Warm-up control, which is pretty cool, just choke. That works fine. Primer I had to replace. Key, the start does not work, but with on it does. Lights, that was a while, but I did get those working on the front and rear. Does have original snow flap. This thing, you can see all the rust. And this thing was beautiful back when it was new. I tell you, I'll show you a, well, that's the future thing. I'll show you. Anyway, I'll get to this bag after. Under the hood is a 437 opposed twin. You can see under here, don't mind the belt debris. That's from the original belt. That is the original belt on it, which that's why I have the two new ones, one as a spare and one to replace this one, because this thing is smoked. But I had this whole engine completely taken out of the sled, and underneath, which is a pain, is the exhaust, and that had holes in it. When I fired this thing up for the first time, it did not sound that good. It was loud, and on the good way. I do like loud stuff, but it was open header loud. And these things are loud even with the muffler on it. I will fire this thing up in a sec after we're done here and show you the other side. There's the belt, the clutches, which were, as you can see, very rusted. But I cleaned them up quite a bit, and the belts has cleaned them up quite a bit. And it does run, and she does run good for what it is. I didn't put too much into it. New spark plugs, welded up the exhaust, new battery, cleaned all the grounds, cleaned up some of the wiring. Chain still is original. I did lube it up, even though it does have a self-oiler, as you can see. So let's get to the cool stuff now. This thing came with a bunch of cool little goodies. So this is the original, kind of like, I don't know, was it like a show diagram of what each little knob and doodabby does? So you have like where it says your reverse, compression release, warm-up control, neutral lockout, and all this kind of information to show what to do, starting and reverse procedures. And that's what went there. So that's the first thing. Second thing, which is pretty cool, is the original assembly instructions. So back then, you had to assemble a lot of stuff on your sleds, not like nowadays where they all come all pre-done. But you had to put on your windshield, your skis, your stand, pretty much like a stand that holds your track up so you can rev it out, your snow flap, your seat, how to attach your seat and all that stuff, your front bumper. But I thought this was pretty cool. I'm surprised it didn't get damaged. It was very mouse infested. The next one, which I think is the coolest thing, is kind of like a brochure. Look at that. Look how colorful these things were. I wish this thing had the back cutter, but it does not. I'm going to be trying to find one for it. There's the lightweight ski horse. Came with a smaller track, kind of a more nimble sled, and this thing was like more of the workhorse. I do want to get this framed. Kind of shows all the different dimensions and whatnots that it comes with. It's pretty cool. So that was the coolest thing, and I'm very surprised this thing didn't get eaten or waterlogged, whatnot. These next things are cool, and they're not as cool, but they're still cool. They're kind of a bunch of small stuff. That's just a kind of old school, what he wrote down, like for nuts and bolts and stuff that was in here. This is a 1970 New Hampshire snow travel. This is a 1970 snow traveling vehicle law book. I haven't read through it yet, but probably some stuff is pretty boring. But definitely something I want to get into one day. Don't really know what that is. Just decided to keep it. So up next, we have a bunch of old registrations. I don't really want to show the previous owners thing, but we have 1972 to 1973 and a bunch of ones like that from the early 70s and whatnot. This is a guide to snowmobiling from Johnson. Unfortunately, some pages I got open, but some pages are stuck together. So I'm still trying to work this book out so I can read this. This is definitely something I'm interested in reading and all that. And then last but not least is the original cleaning instructions, which was pretty cool. Shows Outboard Marine Corporation, which is Evan Rood and Johnson. So yeah, this is the 1970 Johnson. And let's get her started up for you. This one's pretty loud. I do have a new starter solenoid, but unfortunately the key doesn't work. I got to replace that switch, so I have to manually push down on the solenoid. There's like a little switch down there that bypasses the key so I can get the starter going. I can pull start it, but I'm lazy, so we'll just do this way. Up next is the newest sled I own. It's a 1990 Polaris Indy 440 Sport model. Ooh. Nothing really special about this one. I picked this thing up a few years back, and it's been just an awesome tried and true sled. There's really no story behind it, but it's kind of my trail rider. If I want to go far distance, it never lets me down, and it's the comfiest modern sled. So I'm actually going to bring this thing over to Vermont, hopefully this year, to my buddy's cabin and do some serious miles on it. They have all the new assaults and RMKs, and I like the old school stuff. I like blowing out my back, per se. So let me just fire this thing up real fast, and we'll move on to probably what everybody wants to see, which is the Snow Traveler. Yeah, Indies never fail you. Okay, the Snow Traveler. I scooped this one up. Actually, it's the newest one in the collection. I scooped this up a few weeks ago. I've only got to ride it once. This one was restored. This is kind of odd for me because I always buy junk that doesn't run and needs everything. This one didn't need anything. It starts usually first pull, and it's a death trap. It rattles. It doesn't handle that good. Doesn't like to steer, and it is so much fun. I had a blast riding this thing around, and I'm hoping I can bring this to a lot of shows and let people take it for a spin around if there's a spot. Usually at shows, if there's snow, they have a little riding spot, and just so people can try it out and put a smile on their face. That's really the best thing about these things, is they're just really cool. I'll bring you in on this one and give you kind of a quick little tour. So this is a 1965 Snow Traveler. Has a Kohler 8 horsepower motor. Belt driven. So this is your transmission stick. All the way right is reverse. All the way left is forward. And you kind of have that happy medium for neutral. No recoil. Back in the day, they didn't have recoils yet. So let me flip the on switch and grab my recoil out of the front here. It does have a spare belt. So to start it, you gotta take your rope, and there's a little notch. There's 2 of them, and you wrap it around. Now you got to be quick with the choke on this one. As soon as she starts, you got to turn off the choke. Otherwise, she'll die, but she needs the choke to start unless she's warm. But I'll try to get this done in one go for you guys. Nope. Let's try that again. She might not need the choke. Put her like halfway. There she is. I flick this other switch. We do have lights. Front and rear. She runs really good. This windshield does fold down, which is pretty cool. So if you need to get under tight spaces out in the brush or below a fence or something, you can fold that down. And you have your gas tank with your sediment bowl. Here's your kind of like it's like a transfer case in a way. Also kind of like a gear case. And that's what runs your reverse and forward. So let me show you the track. Big metal cleats, no rubber tracks on this one. You do have some fabric, kind of like a fabric. It's like a plastic kind of deal. But hopefully you guys can see that. But that goes all the way to each cleat. There's another cleat underneath. And that kind of helps what keeps this thing floating over the snow. You got big wide skis that don't like to steer that well. It's so light in the front that the rear weight just pushes you through everything. So you really have to learn to ride it and lean and all that stuff. It does pivot. Kind of see like it kind of moves like a caterpillar in a way. When you go up hills, the front lifts up and it has a pivot point in the middle, and it just helps so it's not just one long piece, because this thing is pretty long. I think it's around 10 feet long. Yeah, I can do another video on this one of it riding out back as soon as we get more snow. Show you guys, give you a little more in depth if you want it. Alrighty, let's move on to the next one. So this is my buddy's 1986 Ski-Doo Citation, 250 single lunger again. It did run and ride. It had electric start, which was cool, and we used it to putt around Bob houses out on the bay and stuff like that. But he did take it apart to powder coat the tunnel, and he started taking it apart 2 years ago, and he hasn't got to it yet. So he's hoping to get it done this week to try to get it finished so he can get it running and riding again. He really wants to go back out on this thing. He did get the skis done, but there's really not much to show you. The cowl's off, but there's no engine in it. Track's just laying on it. All the parts and pieces are on the shelf back there of the shop. So not much about this one, but hopefully we can get it up and running soon and get this thing riding and back on the trail or back on the lake again. So that's an overview of all the sleds in the collection. I do have a couple more out back, but those are mid-90s sleds, and those are kind of uneventful, not really any stories about them or anything like that. So probably in the next video, try to get this citation running and going, and we'll go from there. I do have some shop upgrades. I wouldn't say upgrades, I'm just remodeling, and I'll do a video on that as well. I know usually channels try to start doing willet runs and getting those going, but this was kind of a out of the blue, kind of something I kind of wanted to do. Yeah, it's something I just kind of wanted to do, and figure I'd take you guys along and kind of have fun with it. Kind of enjoy making these. Seems fun so far, but I don't know. What do you think? First video. We'll get to the next one and see you next time. Where'd my beer go?